everybody and welcome to Weymouth. Now today I'm going to be sampling the Jurassic Coaster and Jurassic Breezer services operated by First and Morebus along the Jurassic coast, mainly in between Weymouth and Cove. Now just before I get on my first bus, which was the Jurassic Coaster X54 service, I decided to take a look at the Commercial Road bus depot located just around the corner from Weymouth Town Centre. There are a few interesting buses lurking about in the depot, however my bus would be a classic one. It would be an X-Green Line Volvo B90L Right Eclipse Gemini 2. This would be on the X54 like I said earlier, which goes between Weymouth, Wareham and has recently been extended for the summer season down to Corfe Castle and Swanage. I'll only be taking this as far as Lulworth Cove. Here I am departing the King Statue, which is the main bus station in Weymouth, bang on time at 9 o'clock. As we leave the King Statue, we can see a number of other local and interurban bus services operated by First as well as other local bus companies. We can see other bus vehicles that will be travelling on a little bit later on, mostly B9 Geminis. As well as this, just past the King Statue, we can see a number of other local bus services as well as a Mori coaches Enviro 400 on one of the Dorset core routes to Blandford Forum. Here we are departing a bus stop near a roundabout located just off the main road in Warmwell. Here, the X54 and 30 bus services branch off from the Mori Route 5, which is a local service linking Weymouth Crossways located near Morton Station and Dorchester. Because this bus is X-Green Line and First used to operate the route, these B9 Gemini 2s are fitted with very luxury interiors, including very nice seats, tables and USB outlets. Some other buses operated by First Wessex have USB outlets and tables, but not very many of them, especially the ones operating around Weymouth. Here I am arriving at our first stopping point, the extremely popular Lulworth Cove. Luckily, the bus arrived here at around 10:15 in the morning, which meant that the place wasn't very busy. Later on in the day and later on in the year, mainly around the school summer holidays, it can get very overcrowded here, and even the buses can become extremely busy that serve here. Here is the Volvo B9TL Right Eclipse Gemini 2 that I travelled on from Weymouth, departing Lulworth Cove to head to Wool, Wareham and Swanage. Now I'm here at Lulworth Cove, let's have a look at some of the amazing features of this tourist attraction. I quite like the scenery in this area, which is pretty much why it's a tourist attraction. It is very beautiful. However, if you come here around 10 o'clock like I did, it's not too busy and it can be very peaceful and very relaxing, especially when you're stressed all the time like me. Whereas if you come later in the day, it can become extremely overcrowded here. The bit down by the sea is also very nice, and there are lots of nice eateries and restaurants in the area. As well as this, if you get the bus around 2 minutes up the road, or you can walk along the coast, you can get to Durdle Door, which I think is equally as nice, but I've never been there before. Now from memory, last year I didn't get the best weather here. However, this year we've left the bad weather in Weymouth, and it is lovely and sunny here at Lulworth. Anyway, I didn't have too long here before my next bus was arriving, which is the new first bus route 55, which I'll be taking to Wool. Instead of going straight from Lulworth Cove to Wool, I'll be passing through Wool before going to Bovington Tank Museum and Monkey World, and then reversing on myself to head back to Wool Station, where most of the buses stop. Here I am passing through West Lulworth. We'll be passing through here quite a few times as we do a lot of backing and forthing around this area of the Jurassic coast. I'll have to come back here later in the year when I ride on some of the more open top routes. We only cover the X52 in this video since the 55 on the day I was filming this was covered by a normal double-decker bus. I believe later on, towards the summer holidays, the X50 will be returning to this area of the Jurassic coast. Here I am arriving at Wool Station. Out of summer season, I believe the only bus service that this small village gets is the X54 service, but correct me if I'm wrong, as the 30 and 31 services only run during the summer season. The 55 is also a summer-only service and is timed to link with the South Western Railway services from London and Weymouth. However, they don't quite link up with the trains on Sundays. After waiting at the world's slowest and world's worst junction, as well as departing Wool Station a little bit late anyway, as we had to wait for the connecting South Western Railway train, we were finally on the move, heading towards the local museums around Bovington. Here I am arriving at Bovington Tank Museum, otherwise just known as the Tank Museum. This is one of the local tourist attractions and is the most popular out of the two. It is quite good that the bus service stops here, as quite a few people got off, whereas nobody got off at Monkey World. However, overall, the 55 service was quite quiet, and it did make me wonder, do we really need any more services around Lulworth, Cove and Wool, when we already have the 30 and X54 serving both Wool and Lulworth Cove, and we have the 31 which is completely empty, as I went on that a little bit later on in the video, and that also does a circular around the local area. Although saying that, the 55 does serve the local museums. Although I'm not into tanks very much, it looked like a very interesting museum, and I'd like to come back here and have a look around it. A few minutes after departing Bovington Tank Museum, we turned left here, instead of right, to head towards Monkey World, where nobody got on and nobody got off. A complete waste of time, and it was very busy there. However, not very many people actually used the bus. I mean, on this particular journey, nobody did. Here I am arriving back at Wool Station. I quite like a lot of the stations in this area, as well as on the other South Western Railway line, which links Exeter to Basingstoke and London Waterloo. However, a lot of the stations do have 60s buildings, or they look like 60s buildings, and they are starting to look quite tired now. One good thing about many South Western Railway stations across the network is that they show local bus times on the platforms as well as rail times.
10:45 South Western Railway service to London Waterloo.
Here is a class 444 arriving into Wool Station, bound for Weymouth. A lot of trains are running late at the moment, as there had been trespassers as well as animals along the line. After spending a dire 45 minutes at this station, here is my bus finally arriving to take me to my next destination, which is the much nicer Cove Castle. Unfortunately today, I couldn't make it all the way to Swanage, but Cove Castle is just as nice, albeit it still gets very busy and overcrowded. We're not even in the main summer season yet. I'll be back to Wool Station a bit later on. However, it's time to go and tick off some more towns and villages around Purbeck. Here I am arriving at Wareham railway station, which is the next major stopping point along the route from Wool. If the Jurassic Coaster or Jurassic Breezer bus times, the Jurassic Breezer being operated by Morebus, not First, do not connect up with your train at Wool, you can always get off at Wareham station if it's easier, where there are regular services to Swanage as well as back along the railway line to Poole. As well as this, Wareham station looks very unique. It has the same sort of architecture as Wool station, however it does have a preserved Dennis start with an Alexander body. I'm not too sure if it's preserved or if it's been left abandoned. It looks preserved. I know this is a rubbish shot, but just as I left Wareham station, we saw an ex-Blue Star Invar 400 MMC, presumably just down here to cover for the summer services. Here I am passing through Wareham town centre, which is just as nice as all the other local towns in the area. It also has a nice quayside area, which we'll be visiting later on. I'm turning off the main road towards Corfe Castle and Swanage and turning into Purbeck Park at the Northern Park and Ride site. In the winter time, the Purbeck Breezer Route 40 between Poole and Swanage, which I've already covered in a lot of other videos on this channel, goes straight by and you have to get off on the dodgy and dangerous main road. However, in the summer season, the 30 and possibly the 35 services all stop inside the Park and Ride site located next to the railway station. Arriving a few minutes behind schedule at the main stop in Cove Castle, known as the village centre. Albeit it is a little way from the centre, takes 2 or 3 minutes to get to the centre of the village by the time you've crossed the main road, since there's no pavement on the roadside heading towards Swanage. Here is our Scania N230UD Omnicity departing Corfe Castle Village Centre. Here I am walking back into Corfe Castle Centre from the bus stop just outside of the village centre. Here you get a great view of Corfe Castle itself. After having a look around the main part of the village, which is very nice and has many great independent shops, albeit it gets extremely overcrowded, here is my bus to take me back along to Wareham and to the really nice quayside area on the outskirts of town. This was on the normal Purbeck Breezer 40 service, which operates in the winter and the summer. However, this time, instead of getting one of the normal MCV Evo SETI vehicles, this time I got an X-Blue Star Enviro 400 MMC, which had some really nice seats, a lot better than the ones we had on the X Greenline vehicle earlier today, even though that did also have really nice and comfy seats and tables. Before long though, we were arriving into Wareham just as I was starting to relax. Thank you. Here is this Morebus ADL Enviro 400 MMC, still wearing the Blue Star livery, as it's presumably only on loan for the summer season, leaving the quayside area of Wareham to head through to the town centre, railway station, and eventually making its way to Upton and Poole. Here I am now at the Wareham quayside area. This is a very nice area, and ever since I passed through Wareham on the bus for the very first time, I've always wanted to come back and visit this very nice area, and I had just the weather for it today. It looked very nice no matter which side of the bridge you looked on, and was very peaceful even though there was a few other people around. There was a lot of people to justify it being there and keeping it touristy, and at the same time there weren't too many people to make it uncomfortable and kind of make it a rush. Anyway, it was a rush anyway, since the number 40 bus had been a tiny bit late, and more importantly, the number 30 bus had been on time. This was once again the same Scania Omnicity that we got earlier. I'll be taking this back through Wool again and back through Lulworth Cove, heading to Durdle Door this time, only to the main road though. I don't have time to walk down to the Durdle Door itself. Here is this Scania N230UD Omnicity leaving the main stop just outside Durdle Door on the Jurassic Breezer 30 service, heading towards Weymouth and eventually Dorchester, I think this one was bound for. Now, you usually find these Omnicities along the 30 and 31 routes. However, sometimes you will find some more interesting vehicles. For example, last year on the 31, there was a Salisbury Reds Plaxton President on there. Unfortunately, I was nowhere near the area. However, today I am in the area, and the 31 has this day Murray Coaches ADL Enviro 400, specifically vehicle 1509, which I think is probably usually used on a few school services throughout the day, as it has been fitted with seat belts. Here I am passing through West Lulworth once again, on my way, this time heading to Wool for the final time. Just before we leave this area for the final time, at least for a good couple of months, I'd just like to say that the scenery in this area is absolutely amazing, and no matter if you use the bus or use a car or use some other form of public transport to get here, I recommend coming here no matter how hard or long the journey is. The scenery is absolutely spectacular, even on a rainy day when you'll get absolutely soaked. The scenery is still amazing. Anyway, here I am back at Wool Station, where the scenery isn't quite as amazing. My train was running about 11 minutes late at this point due to trespassers on the railway earlier today, and even then there are still a few trains before that running late due to animals on the line. Anyway, there goes that 31 bus heading back towards Lulworth Cove. Here is my train arriving into Wall Station. This is another Class 444, which are very nice trains, and I'll be taking this not to Weymouth, but to Dorchester South. Although the Class 444s, as well as the 450s, which also sometimes operate along the route, are all very nice, the journey between Wool and Dorchester only takes around 15 minutes, and before long we are arriving into Dorchester South. Now I do quite like this station. It has a nice modern feel to it without being too modern and at the same time not being too old. The whole area around Dorchester South Station, as well as the Brewery Square area, has a very nice mix of old and new. However, I wouldn't say the station is exactly fit for purpose anymore. It is very tight, built on a very tight bend, although saying that there wasn't really much they could do about that. However, the station is extremely small and gets very overcrowded as soon as the train arrives into the station. Now I could have picked up my next bus from Dorchester South Station. However, since I had a bit of time, I decided to go and have a look around Dorchester Town Centre. However, as you can see right now, there are a few buses that do stop at the railway station, not just the Jurassic coaster services, mainly the local Day Murray services, as well as a few other of the Dorset core routes that also serve the town. Here is the Brewery Square area of Dorchester, which is very nice. After having a drink and a small snack, here comes my next bus, arriving into the main stops in Dorchester Town Centre, located on Trinity Street. If you can't tell, this is a first bus Volvo B9TL Bridport Gemini on the Jurassic Coaster X51 service heading towards Axminster. I'll be taking this as far as Bridport bus station. After Bridport, the bus will continue along through Charmouth and Lyme Regis, which are both very popular seaside and very touristy towns, before arriving into Axminster a few hours after leaving Dorchester, and before that Bridport. All of the buses from now on will be operated by First, however I don't think they call it the Jurassic Coaster anymore. I'm not too sure what it's called, to be honest. Whatever it's called, it uses the same type of branding as the Exmoor Explorer bus in Somerset. Around 10 minutes after leaving Dorchester Town Centre, we pass through the very prestigious area known as Poundbury. It has something to do with King Charles and is a relatively new town built to look very old-fashioned, since it's very royal and has something to do with King Charles, like I said a minute ago. Most new towns, or new housing estates for that matter, don't have very good bus connections or rail connections. However, Poundbury is served by the very frequent number 10 service, as well as a few other Dorchester town buses and the Jurassic Coaster X51 service. As well as this, the trial route via Martinstown and Winterbourne Steepleton is still operating into the 2025 season, which is great news for the local people. After running along the country lanes around Martinstown, here we are pulling back onto the main road in Winterbourne Abbas. am passing through the absolutely amazing Dorset countryside. Even on this side of Weymouth, the scenery is still spectacular as we head into Devon, albeit this bus doesn't go fully into Devon, it only goes as far as Axminster. That is one reason why I would take the X51 over the X53. The scenery is just amazing, albeit if an open-top X52 turns up, I'm sorry, but I cannot resist an open-top bus, even in the winter season when it's absolutely freezing cold. Anyway, not long after leaving Dorchester, I mean it was, but it didn't seem like very long, here I am arriving into Bridport town centre. Most passengers got off here, however I continued along to the bus station. Here I am arriving into Bridport bus station. I believe the bus station, and the town itself for that matter, used to get served by a lot more bus services. Unfortunately, the main bus services that the town gets are the Jurassic coaster services, which decrease in frequency as the winter season kicks in. Although saying that, it does get served by the 7 town service operated by Dorset Community Transport on Saturdays only, I believe, and it also gets served by the Dorset Core Route CR6, which has recently had its timetable upgraded and has a few extra journeys which extend beyond Beaminster to Yeovil. Now, although I only had an hour to kill before my next bus departed heading back towards Weymouth, it was already arriving in on its return journey from Weymouth. And yes, if you couldn't see it coming, it was the open-top X52 service. The vehicle for tonight's run down to Weymouth on the very last service of the day on the X52, if you didn't realise, was this ex-Curno Volvo B9TL Red Eclipse Gemini 2. I believe before it entered the Curno fleet, it was in service in London as a standard double-decker vehicle. I believe first were the ones to chop off the roof. As a result, it still has its middle door, as they have done absolutely nothing else to the vehicle. It still has its old London seats, for God's sake. Anyway, before I departed heading back towards Weymouth, I still had an hour to kill. Although the majority of buses on the First Wessex network are stored at Weymouth Commercial Road bus depot, a number of buses are stored behind Bridport bus station at Bridport bus depot. Anyway, that's enough to do with buses. Here I am walking up the main street in Bridport, where there are a number of bus stops which a lot of people actually use, whereas the bus station isn't used very much at all. Anyway, after looking around Bridport for a bit, which is a very nice market town, and I do recommend coming here for an hour or two, it was finally time to board the open topper to head back to Weymouth via West Bay and Abbotsbury. after leaving the bus station bang on time at 17:34, we passed through Bridport town centre along the main street. Here I am arriving into West Bay, which is a very nice seaside village and technically a resort. A lot of tourist people come here on holiday in the summer season, and it is actually a very nice looking seaside town, which makes a nice change from the ugly looking places like Burnham and Weston in Somerset. They're not that bad though, I've seen worse, but West Bay is certainly one of the best. It gets served by the X52 and X53 services and gets a 2-hourly service in the winter season. Here I am passing through Spire. Here I am passing through Abbotsbury, which is one of the more major villages along the route. Just like West Bay, in the winter season it only gets a 2-hourly service, but thanks to the openment of X52, it gets an hourly service in the summer season between Bridport and Weymouth, which I think is a pretty frequent service for a village of its size, considering that similar sized villages such as Weston's Orland in Somerset doesn't get a Sunday service and only gets a service every 2 hours no matter what season it is on a Monday to Saturday. Here I am arriving back into Weymouth via the bus depot and the harbour area. Now just before I leave you with a shot of the B9 at the King's statue, I'd just like to ask you, the viewers, what you would like to see, or at least what bus videos you'd like to see on the channel. Obviously I'd still be attending bus rallies and bus events, however I would like to make a few videos on the rural routes across the southwest. But would you be interested in that? For example, I'm currently looking into making a video on a small operator called Oakley's Coaches, who operate many rural routes, and many routes I think I'd find very interesting around Tavistock. But if you're not going to enjoy the video, what's me filming it all? So what's your thoughts on my videos, and could I do anything to improve them, and could I visit any new places? Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it, and if you don't, maybe I won't bother filming the Jurassic coaster next year. Anyway, take care everybody, and I will see you in the next one. Bye everyone!